Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. I'm Tennison.
And I'm Ginelle. Thank you for joining us as we discuss topics and give practical tools that help you live, grow, and be in healthy, joy-filled relationship with God, yourself, and others.
For more information and resources, or if you're looking for coaching, connection, and community, visit tableandwell.org. We hope you enjoy this podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Table and Well podcast. We are in episode number 16 of season 3. I know we're moving along in this. This is crazy. Again, guys, we are in our relational maturity series revisited, and we're actually in the parent stage of maturity. We spent our last 3 podcasts there, and this may be the conclusion of this. We'll see what happens. We've got a few more things to run through here, but it's been really good so far, and we've had a lot of good conversation.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and so today we are going to jump in and we're going to look at the parent maturity holes. So some of the obvious immaturity spaces that you'll see in parents of children that are not fully mature in this stage of maturity.
And I think there's something important here to also be thinking about leaders.
Yes, that's
because
good.
This is where this parent role is also occupied by leaders. Yes. Where remember that adult stage is we're in mutually satisfying relationships. There's not a differentiation in power, or in authority, or in decision making or consequence or anything like that. Typically in a leader follower role, whether that's in the workplace or in a parent child role, or within maybe a traditional church structure even, that we would almost attribute the same parental responsibilities to a leader, and a leader would also take on similar in I'm needing to learn how to take care of others sacrificially with joy. And when we have leaders who do not have the maturity to do that, then we end up with a lot of pain. And we're going to talk about it in a parent context, but also I think it's helpful to recognize this in a leader capacity as well.
And we may actually, depending on where the conversation goes, but there's definitely a good chance that we can talk specifically about leader in that space too.
Right.
Because again, talking in that leader space, in that leader role, excuse me, is, again, like I said a few podcasts ago, how this stage of maturity is where all of the gaps become more evident.
For sure.
And so you think about leaders that maybe if you've had an unhealthy leader, or you've been kind of put off by a leader or hurt by a leader, I can almost guarantee that those wounds that they caused came from some gaps in their maturity back in infant and child stage, in the adult stage. In the adult
stage, yeah. So it's their immaturity that created the wounding. And if you think about that building of maturity being what fills our bucket so that we can care for others in this capacity, when we're lacking that capacity, somebody's going to pay the difference. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get into it. So again, obvious immaturity holes that you'll see in this stage of maturity. So family members or people may be put at risk, deprived, or feel unimportant. Again, that goes to me, that likens back to that child stage of maturity where it's about yourself and you're trying to figure out how to best take care of yourself. And when you do that, you can put other people at risk.
Right.
People can feel deprived. They feel unimportant. And so if you're not fully mature in that stage, and you have not graduated or moved into the parent stage of knowing how to take care of others and giving sacrificially, then people absolutely will feel that.
Yes, they will. And I think there's something valuable here. We just went to a conference up in Raleigh with Dr. Jim Wilder, and he actually spoke. I don't know if this will be, he actually has a series of books that are coming out that are based on his original book, Living with Men, which was put out, I don't know, in the 80s, I think. And he's a brilliant psychologist. So that book was filled with all kinds of complex concepts around what it looks like to grow into a mature man. Yeah. And it's part of what the maturity model came out of. He since is now re-releasing that same content in a bit more palatable of a way in a 3-book series that will talk about this. And when we went to the conference, he spoke about what it is to be a protector.
This is good. Yeah.
Instead of
gentle
a predator.
Protector,
yeah, a gentle protector instead of a predator, and how many of us end up, because of our immaturity, end up functioning or continuing to function in predator roles rather than in protector roles as we should as we mature. And this is exactly what comes into play here, is that what it looks like to be a predator is essentially, I am going to get what I want and what I need at the cost of everyone else.
Yes.
Right? And that could look like, when we think of predator, we think of other things, but it also includes that. But predatorial behavior is serving self first.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Like, I'm going to eat.
I'm going to eat.
Even if it costs you your life.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
You know, and I'm going to eat what I want, regardless of what it costs you. Whereas a protector would take a completely different role of, I may sacrifice what I want and need in order to ensure your safety.
Yes.
And, but that cannot be done without maturity.
Yes.
And immaturity causes us to be in that much more self-serving role.
Yes, it does. Absolutely. Really
so
good.
I don't know if he'll put all that to say. I don't know if there'll ever be an audio of that. I don't know if they were recorded either, but his books are likely going to touch on that are coming out, and they are called Having a More Human Community, Growing a More Human Community. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
By Jim Wilder. They're in pre-release right now and will be out September 21st.
All right. So by the time you watch this, they will
highly
be out.
recommend.
Yes.
He's going to go further into maturity and unfolding it and what it looks like in community through those books, which we're so excited about.
Yes, we are. We can't wait. Another obvious maturity hole that you may see will be children may be parentified, having to take care of parents, which actually blocks their maturing process. So we talked about this actually in the child stage of maturity, where we talked about that pseudo maturity is what would happen. Right. So if a parent isn't mature in those phases and they're not protecting and they're not creating belonging, not taking care of themselves, doing different things, putting expectations on their kids, and all those spaces that are way beyond their years, excuse me, then their children will step up a lot of times and become the parent, and they start parenting. And it's those kids that you see that are, 10, 11, whatever, maybe younger, and you're like, they're so mature for their age because and
they get so much credit
for being so mature. And at the end of the day, it's stunting their maturity because they're literally going to be missing a full stage of maturity that they needed to have developed so they can be,
which was child maturity and learning how to take care of themselves first.
Right. And so when they become older, or become parents and adults, when they move in those stages that they naturally will go into, then it starts to show up there where they can't take care of themselves, and they will they'll give away themselves to their detriment. Right. Most of the time.
Yep, absolutely. I think it's interesting as you were talking about that. I went back and looked at the parent stage tasks. Yeah. And it is interesting how children who have been parentified basically go about fulfilling these tasks, even though they're not stated anywhere. They go about protecting their family and their siblings. They go about building a home often, trying to create safety for siblings or safety for themselves, belonging, identity. They serve their family, usually in ways that are not appropriate. I just think that's really interesting how they... and they give life without requiring anything in return, and so it's almost like it creates a vacuum that they begin to fill, because my point that I want to make is the need is there. Yes, like this is an intrinsic need. Yes. In a family is to have this parent that's providing these things, and if the parent isn't doing it, oftentimes what ends up happening, particularly the older child, will step up and begin to fill that space that is necessary, because somehow we all intuitively know it's needed. Yeah. It's so interesting.
And it's interesting. And I think it happens another way too. Sometimes parents will put those responsibilities on their kids. Right. And so it happens both ways sometimes. And neither one is good. Neither one is good. Let's see. Children may be vulnerable to peer pressure, unhealthy group bonds, and be less likely to succeed in life's goals. So again, that goes back to the space where not being protected, not being, not their identity not being spoken into, and them knowing who they are, because, which is, there's something very interesting about this. So far, these three here don't necessarily affect the parent. These three here actually, because of their immaturity as parents, affects their children.
Right. Yeah. The children experience the adverse effects.
Yeah. Because if the parents are mature in those stages, then obviously these things don't happen. But if they're not, and like you're saying, they have to step up and they move into these spaces. And so they are more likely to they don't have anyone guiding them.
Right.
Showing them modeling for them what it looks like to be an adult, to be a human. So they go where the identity is, where they find belonging and identity. And if it's not in their family, then they'll go find it somewhere else.
Right. Again, those needs that need to be met, they're going to find a way to meet them, even if they can't articulate what those are or identify good places to get them. They will go find them somewhere. And I think something else that's worth mentioning here is that when parents have these maturity gaps, this is also where having other parents, mature parents in the community, and when a community is caring for one another together as a family, and this could look like multi-generational family too. We didn't really mention that before, but when there's multiple people operating in a parent role in a child's life, then we all have gaps. We're all gonna, we all have things that we need to work on, and we don't have we're not skilled enough yet to be able to maybe to serve that child in that window of time, right? Like if you're just hearing about this and you have a 10-year-old, you've got years of work ahead of you, and you're still raising a kid. You can't like push the pause button on okay, we're going to pause parenting. But this is why it's so important also to have community, is that where I am weak, others can be strong. Yeah. And where I am strong, I can fill where other people are weak, and then we don't have children who are paying the consequence, nor having to fill those gaps for themselves or for each other as siblings.
So good.
Yeah.
So good. Another one here, another point, obvious maturity holds will be parents may be overwhelmed and fueled by stress or fear instead of joy. And so we've seen that. The idea of, again, if these skills aren't honed and grown and matured, then you can parent from a place of fear, and everything is coming from a place of fear as opposed to a place of love or joy.
Right.
So every decision you make, every conversation you have, you leave the house and you're constantly consumed with whatever the issue is, or the problem, or the whatever could be out there that could be danger.
Right.
You're
parenting out of insecurity instead of stability.
Yeah. That's really good.
Like actually knowing who I am and the power and the authority that I carry, and that I can actually do this because I have a full bucket, versus scarcity of that no matter what I do, it's not going to be enough, and this is only going to end poorly.
Yeah. I think back to when we were youth pastors in Flint, and some of the parents that we ran across, and some of the kids that were in our youth group or not, but we would see that their parents would literally parent from a place of fear, and it was more of they didn't want to lose their kids. They didn't want their kids to go any further, or it was almost like they would, for lack of better words, self-sabotage their kids' growth to where they would have to literally stay home and be with them, because I don't know, but just thinking through some of these things, speculating that either they didn't know who they were without their kids, they didn't want to be left alone, they didn't know who they were, and so all these different things, and so they would literally do things that would force their kids to stay.
Yeah, to not operate in their fullness, right? Yeah. Because if they operated in their fullness, they might, pass them.
Yeah.
And that can be really scary.
And the fear of them leaving or leaving them behind or anything like
right.
that. Yeah.
And that can be really scary for those of us who have struggled all the way through into our adult our adult lives and into parenthood, and realizing if I create a passing lane for my child, that equals my child will pass me and leave me potentially, or end up better than I am and potentially judge me or have opinions about my past and why I didn't do better. And I think honestly that's really challenging right now in this day and age, because I mean, even what we're teaching right now, Dr. Wilder has been pioneering this out since, well, he said 25 years.
Yeah.
And so 25 years ago, we didn't know this. And we have kids in their, oh gosh, mid-20s, which is so wild. And, you know, they have access to the internet, and all of this is being discovered and all of this is being put out for people to consume daily. Like daily revelations are coming about emotional health, mental health, relationships, how to engage with one another, how to create safety and belonging and identity and all these things. And like, we didn't know that.
Didn't know any
like that wasn't a thing. Right. And so there's some fear there of feeling like I don't know what I'm doing, and somehow my 20-year-old does. And you know, and we know in reality that's not real. There's a sense of, there's a reality around living on the earth and getting some real life experience underneath your belt. But there's a beautiful opportunity here to partner with the fact that we are discovering this, and we could discover it together. Yeah. Like, I didn't know what that was like in my childhood. I didn't know how to have a healthy relationship with my parents. And because of that, I don't really know how to have a really healthy relationship with you. Like, clearly I've missed it sometimes, and our relationship has been led by fear or insecurity or instability, but I want to change that. Will you work on that with me? Yeah. And if we can find that way forward together in community and in our families, I think there's a lot of hope to be had here that doesn't have to just be like, well, I missed it or, oh, I have gaps and it's going to take years to grow them. And so, bummer. We're all just going to like suffer until that happens. I think part of the point is that we get to actually learn this together. Yeah, absolutely. Particularly with our young adult kids and with our young kids, for that matter. Like, you can also say to your 10-year-old, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. Like, and we've said this to our kids at times, like, hey, we're learning to be parents at the same time you're learning how to be a kid. Yeah. Yep. And sometimes we're not going to do that well. And sometimes you're not going to do that well. Can we figure out how to have grace about that? And as we're both learning. And I think if you can have that open communication, it helps. It really helps. Yeah. Like, the goal here is not that you have all the answers or that you have it all figured out. The point is, maturity is a growing thing, and you learn as you go. So it's good. Yeah. Stay encouraged in that. Yes. So the last one that we have listed here is hopeless, depressed. What is this? Disintegrating. Wow, we went to the... Well, and it just speaks to what I just said, everything right? Everything you just said. Yep. Like, when we don't have the resources we need in life. Yes. Whether that's even within us to show up well. It's not even necessarily financial resources or whatever, but even within our own selves to show up well, we are going to feel that, and it's likely going to feel like hopelessness, despair, and then it's going to create disconnection and disintegration in the way that I don't see a way forward. We don't have what we need to make this work, and so we might as well just let it go. Yeah, and then this, again, because the stage 2 of parenting and this parent stage of maturity, there's a lot of modeling for your kids and for your community, and so if that is what you're modeling, then that becomes just the norm in the family unit. And so then absolutely you get this downward spiral that can be really hard to get out of. And even today, or in these last few podcasts, there might be things that we have shared that it's like, hey, as a parent, this is your task to do, and you should quote unquote be able to do this, or this is what you quote unquote should be doing in this parent role. And what we don't want to do is evoke hopeless despair. Right. Because really what it looks like is not, I don't want to say not doing these things, but it is about going back and realizing, okay, there's something in my infant maturity skills that didn't quite get filled. Right. So let me work on that. Yeah. And not that that equals I have to know how to be this fully mature parent by tomorrow.
Right. It means
that I'm recognizing, oh yeah, I'm struggling to show up in this way as a parent or as a leader.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? And I'm not approaching these relationships well, and I want to do it differently. So let me see what it is that I need to work on.
Yeah.
And we offer, on our website, we offer a quiz that can help identify where your gaps could be. And then, as you know, our collabs are stellar for really, we do all the remediation work and go all the way back to infancy. And we work on skills with everyone, because all of us, even if we quote unquote have them figured out, can intentionally work and grow on those.
Yeah, for sure. So good. Yeah. So what are our primary tasks to be completed? So we've gone through the kind of the meat of everything. We've got some other things that we definitely want to get to, like practical, like personal tasks and community tasks. But Ginelle, can you tell us, again, just remind us those primary tasks to be completed, and then that primary problem, if not completed?
Yes. So our primary task is sacrificially taking care of children.
With joy. With
joy, yes. And remember, and with joy is that idea within my capacity, making sure I have enough capacity to do that well without bottoming out.
Yes.
And primary resulting problem as an adult, if this is not completed, is that you will find that you have distant and conflicted family relationships.
Yeah. All that in a nutshell. Yeah. Yep.
All right. So let's talk about those practical personal tasks. Yes. And this really is about us saying, okay, so we've talked about this maturity stage. What can I actually do?
Yeah.
Shoot. What can I do?
Yeah.
And I started talking a little bit about this, that there are practical things you can do. It's not that we bring this to you to tell you to measure yourself and then come up short and then wish you well on your life.
Yeah.
Yep. So let's talk through just a handful of things that people can do to grow in their parent maturity stage.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So one is to identify 1 to 2 tasks to prayerfully begin to work on. And I jumped ahead on this, but the quiz will help you.
Yeah.
That's a great place to see what's going on. And there's also a maturity, I can't remember what, indicators that are put out by Life Model that rehash a lot of this, that say, hey, if you have this gap, you're going to notice that this is what's going on in your life. And that might be another great way to self-identify 1 or 2 tasks that you can work on. And we say prayerfully in the way that do not become overwhelmed or judgmental or critical of yourself. It really is about, we all have an opportunity to grow. What might yours be?
Yeah. And I'll simply add to that, maybe you've heard something on this series here, this parent level maturity that we've talked about, that you went, oh yeah, that hurts. That one stings. That gets me right here. That might be one that you just want to prayerfully consider.
Yeah, you might already have one resonating for sure.
Absolutely. Or 2.
Or 2. Or 10. Anyway. Second thing you could do would be to find a council of parents to enter relationship with. This can feel really tricky. And I think moms actually do this a lot
moms
better.
Do really well.
There's lots of Facebook groups that are mom groups, or there's Mom's Day Out and they bring the littles, but there's very little for dads, and that doesn't mean that you should just live with that, as truth. Yeah. Create one if you cannot find one.
Yeah.
Think about maybe some other couples in your life that you could just start saying, hey, could I call you if I have a question? Or call them if you have a question. Call them if
you have a question, yeah.
We were talking about this the other night about someone you were talking to, and they were talking about how they just drop in on each other. Like, hey, what are you up to tonight? Oh, okay, well, I'm bringing over some food. We're going to make dinner together. Yeah. And we need to get back to that level of community where everything isn't so formal and so, like, an appointment has to be set in order for us to have a conversation about parenting, but that it's more organic and in real time.
Yeah, and it's the idea of doing life together, living life in community.
Yep.
Deep connected community. Yeah. So, yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
You want to find elders who have been there and done that successfully.
Yes.
Keyword is successfully.
Well, and I think successfully is a keyword, and you can learn a lot what not to do.
I was gonna say that. Maybe success could look like, this is what I did and it didn't work.
Right.
So this is and so again, it goes back to that place of someone who's been down the road. someone who has gone before you, and they've got some life. They've got some life under the wheels that can help you navigate some of these spaces. So
they know the terrain.
Yeah. Yeah. So you want to try to find those people.
Yes.
And
engage with them. Yes. Invite them to lunch. Invite them to coffee. Invite them over to your house. Have them over for dinner. Invite them into spaces where they're watching you interact with your kids, and then invite their feedback.
Yes, that's really good.
Our elders have been so dismissed in our world that, one, they're never invited into those spaces, first of all. Second of all, they're never invited for feedback. So oftentimes they may have something to share, but they feel like their opinion is not welcome at the table.
Right.
And we do this, I think, also to our elder parents. It's a tricky thing to be an elder parent of your biological family. So just remember that when you find people that are further down the road than you, they often have a perspective that you don't have. And even if you invite it and it's delivered poorly, or you don't agree, or whatever, hold space for it. Consider it. Stay curious about it. Have grace for how it's delivered, and hold space for this to be, again, just like welcome back into our life and our community of what does it look like to invite you to give me feedback on my parenting, and for me to receive that, and for you to figure out how to deliver it well, and for me to receive it well, and then not just even leave it there, but maybe create an ongoing conversation of, okay, I didn't really agree with that part, but I did this part and I tried it, and it worked, or it didn't work, or how can I adjust this? Or I didn't agree with it because X, and then you're also helping teach that elder maybe to see something from a different perspective that they're not seeing. I know our kids are teaching us stuff every day that it's like, I didn't see that way.
Yeah. Again, I love that. It's not dismissing it because the way it was delivered or you don't agree with it. It is being secure enough in your own identity to take it in, consider it, and then weigh it out. And then have the conversation about it.
And to not check your brain at the door. I think we can flip side both of these, where we can also end up in a space where we're like, well, they said I should do this, and so now I have to do that. And we stop thinking about how unique the human that we're raising is, and how unique we are, and how, that also comes into play in applying whatever might be shared.
Very good. I love that.
All right. So another practical personal task could be to begin to do things that make your home safe and secure. So that could look like having some really great conversation around setting new standards, like honesty and integrity, that we're going to be people who communicate openly.
Yes.
And honestly, we're going to be quick to listen and slow to speak. We're going to speak with each other and not at each other, because that can be a defense mechanism that we use when we feel really unstable. We're going to be more physically affectionate, maybe that has been lost amongst us because of these deficiencies in our lives.
Because and I think part of this too, and you might find yourself in this space, and it could be because you didn't see it modeled,
right?
Growing up. And that just wasn't how things ran in your home. And so, this could be, honestly, maybe completely out in left field for you in this space. But I want to tell you that you can do this, that you can do it. You can begin to start small. Just pick little things. You don't have to go in and eat the whole cow.
Right.
Just pick one or two areas or one thing that you can go in and, as far as that, setting the standard for honesty and integrity or whatever it might be. But going in intentionally and having these conversations, and just things that are going to make, again, because part of the role of a parent is to create a safe, secure home, belonging, identity, protection, all those things. And they can be found in doing those things. Yeah.
And if you are in a marriage raising children together, you cannot do this as a family if you cannot do this as a couple.
Yes, you need to be on the same page.
And not even just on the same page, but actually
walking it out together.
Not just hey, we want to be quick to listen and slow to speak. Are we on the same page about that? And then every time we get an opportunity, we're quick to speak and
slow to listen.
We actually have to practice that together. Our kids are going to do what they see us do, period, amen. We could sit down and have the most eloquent conversation about how it's going to be or how we want it to be. But if we're not actually doing that, then then they're just going to do what we do. So
right.
I think it's important too to remember that this starts with you.
Yes.
And in a marriage relationship, it is really tricky because you may be gung-ho about this idea. Right. You might be listening to this podcast and you're like, yes, this is the parent that I want to be. Yep. And then you have a spouse who is maybe a little less interested,
right.
and may not see a value for it, or may have major maturity gaps.
Yep.
And I just want to encourage you that one of the things that we've learned is, one, you can't force your spouse to do anything.
Right.
Two, you can still be the parent you want to be.
Yes.
But you need to model this out for yourself. Like, this has to be real in your own life. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to your relationship with your spouse and modeling this for your children, I would highly encourage you to get individual counseling, therapy, coaching, whatever might be appropriate for you, and then do work together as a married couple to bring this into your marriage.
Yes.
Oftentimes we struggle to do these things because of individual gaps that we have, not because of marriage gaps that we have.
Yeah.
The marriage gaps are a result of our individual gaps. And so do the work to find out what's going on and create that space. And we talk to couples a lot of times, Lord knows, bringing two people in to do something as important as raising children together is no small task. Nevertheless, just being married together.
Right.
And we often are like, it's just supposed to be roses and sunshine, you know? Yep. And it's not. It's hard work, and oftentimes we need help along the way. And because our communities are missing mature elders and mature parents, right now one of the major tools that we have that is available to us that we need to use is professionals.
Yes.
And sometimes paying for someone to help us in spaces that hopefully one day we'll have elders to help us naturally.
Yes.
Is no small thing, and is worth every single dollar if you can find the right person.
Every single one. Mm-hmm. So the last one here on the practical personal task would be to grow your joy bucket. So we talk a lot about that, or your joy well would be another way that we would say that. Mm-hmm. But one of the major ways to do that would be to practice appreciation. Appreciation is just simply living a lifestyle where you're expressing things that you are grateful for, that you're thankful for. Living a lifestyle in that way. It can be done personally, like you can just do it with express to yourself, or just internally, or we have an exercise that we put out a lot called the interactive appreciation, which is a really simple way to engage in appreciation, where you can write out your appreciation and you quiet and you listen for God's response and write that out. And so just doing that in a personal space is one way to fill your joy bucket. Another way to do that would be to tell your family and friends what you appreciate about them.
Right. This can actually be a family practice.
Absolutely.
Is sharing appreciation together.
Yes.
Whether that's, like you said, sharing what you love about one another, what you appreciate about one another. And this could be awkward for some families. So it could look like you write a word, or you do a round where you just think of one word that you appreciate about each family member, and then you kind of put each other on the hot seat.
Yep.
Or it could look like highs and lows of the day.
Yeah.
Bringing that back
at dinner time.
To dinner time of what's your high today? What was something that you really enjoyed about your day today? And practicing appreciation in that way, if practicing appreciation about each other feels too intimate or uncomfortable.
That's good. Yep. Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
All right.
Sorry.
That's okay. Another way to grow your joy bucket is to quiet yourself. And easier said than done, but this is learning that rhythm of joy and quiet. And we talk about these things like they're just like, go to the grocery store, and everybody knows how to go to the grocery store. We know that quieting yourself can be a challenge, and that's why we teach on it. Yeah, and a chore. But that's all available to you through a lot of the things that we do. But quieting is a big deal. If you are living in internal chaos and with things, we were talking about this just in collabs this week, about when you notice that you can't go a moment without something, music or scrolling or a show or a video or whatever, you can't quiet for a moment, then it's likely going to be really, really hard to do this, and you have a hole in your bucket that's stripping out all that great energy that is coming in. So learning to quiet yourself really kind of shores up those little holes in the bucket and allows you to keep the capacity that's coming in.
Absolutely.
Also, growing your joy bucket looks like finding what brings you joy and actually doing it.
Just go do it.
Recharge.
Yes, recharge. Yeah. So this is where taking care of yourself comes in handy. This is where that child level maturity of knowing what you need, what brings you joy, asking for it, or just going and doing it, taking care of yourself in this space, so you can be recharged, so you can come back and give from a full tank, as opposed to continuing to give things away on E and you've got nothing else to give. Everyone benefits from that.
Right. And I think this, as a mom, I see the pattern so often of women becoming moms, and one of the first things they do is surrender their identity, and that's one of those spaces that is an unhealthy way to give beyond your capacity. And finding what brings you joy and actually doing it allows you to maintain your identity in the midst of those mothering years.
Yeah.
You will become a different person, and it's a beautiful thing, and you will lay down some things and pick up others, but so many of us end up on the other side of motherhood forgetting whatever brought us joy and wondering why we're so exhausted and so out of touch with ourselves, and we don't know up from down of who we are. It's because we've let this go. We've stopped taking care of ourselves in the midst of it, and this is something that needs to be fiercely protected. And as spouses, we should be protecting also for one another and encouraging one another to continue to love the things they love. Being a parent's really demanding. There's no doubt about that. That what I'm saying is not like, just go out and do what you love, a couple times a week. I'm not, that's...
It's not,
imaginary.
We know it's not that easy.
We know it's not that easy. And it's as important as anything else that you would do for your child. Do it for you.
Well, it's the old adage of, if you're in an airplane and the oxygen mask comes down, you got to put yours on first, so you can... Then you put on the person that's next to you, who you're taking care of. Because if you go down, you can't help them anyway.
Right. And I can hear people, this is so funny. Sometimes I hear commentary in my head to these podcasts that we never get. But but I can hear people saying, well, what happens if my spouse then does want to do things 3 times a week, and that's totally unrealistic in this phase of life that we're in. The sign of immaturity. Maturity is going to be what governs the balance of and honestly the balance of both saying yes to things that bring you joy, because if you're always saying no to things that bring you joy, that's a maturity gap. And maturity will also help you govern an appropriate amount of investment into that. You won't be finding yourselves
every night going out doing something.
Or never being with your kids, and that includes work. I think this gets to be a little bit wonky when it comes to work, and if work is something we love, or work is something that seems to bring us joy, or at least purpose, a sense of purpose, which we then sometimes mistake as joy.
Ooh, that's good.
That there's also a balance there of, remember, as a parent, part of what we do is enjoy our family, and we serve our family, and we stay present with our family. And so it's a both and. Very much both and. A healthy balance. Yeah,
for sure. So finally, guys, we want to just leave you with this, the practical community task that you can do when you see other parents in your community maybe struggling or looking for places that they can connect to and belong in. So one of the things that you can do is be the council of parents for each other. So just be that. Create it. Show up. Call them. Invite them out. Invite them into your life, and just walk that out together.
And elders, we're coming for you on the next podcast. But
yes, we are.
Elders, you can also actually create this space. You have capacity that these parents don't have in trying to figure out who's going to host and clean a house and have 32 children over. Elders, you can also create an opportunity for a council of parents to be invited into your space and relieve at least one piece of what makes that challenging for parents to do that for themselves.
So good. Another thing you can do is be the community that encourages, guides, and gives breaks and opportunities to recharge. Again, it goes back to that council of parents we just talked about and what you just said with elders. It's that same thing. Create that thing. You can create the thing that you need as well.
Right.
And so that's what's that's stating there. And then the last thing on the list here is teach other parents how to bring their family back to joy. So if you, as parents, and you notice kind of the overall demeanor or attitude or overall joy levels. Let's say this: overall joy levels of families that maybe you're close to, right? You see in your neighborhood that are down, that they don't actually understand or know what it looks like to have joy, or how to find joy, or what joy is, or things like that. And if you've listened to this podcast and maybe you've gone through some of the things that we've talked about, and you have a better understanding of what joy is and truly what it is, teach others. Just teach them, and then they can pass it on to their kids and their family. And now you're beginning to build the community that we really all want and need and desire.
Right. And we essentially do this with the table. We just don't do it from a parent standpoint.
Very true.
Right? Like invite another family over to dinner. And if you're used to doing appreciation around your table and you guys share what brought you joy each day as a family, and that's a typical rhythm that you now have instilled, invite another family to come do that and try that with you. And then they will likely pass it into their family. It doesn't cost much. It might take a meal together.
A meal, go figure.
Right.
Community.
And a little bit of modeling. And then you now have passed on some of this joy building that is so critical to our family's well-being.
Yep. Awesome. Well, that is the parent stage of maturity. And like Ginelle said, in our next few episodes of our podcast here, we're going to be talking about probably our favorite space, which is to talk about anyway.
Our most passionate.
Passionate. There you go. Is the elder stage of maturity. And so, thanks for being with us, and we'll see you in our next podcast as we dive deep into the elder stage of maturity. You've been listening to the Table and Well podcast. New episodes stream every Tuesday. If you have enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review to let us know. Also, subscribe on your favorite listening platform to stay up to date on all things Table and Well. To learn more, start your journey, or get information on how Table and Well can help develop your community, family, or teams to be relationally healthy and authentically connected, please go to tableandwell.org/collab to schedule an interest call, or you can email us directly at known@tableandwell.org.